Operation Ivory Coast was a mission conducted by United States Special Operations Forces and other American military elements to rescue U.S. prisoners of war during the Vietnam War. It was also the first joint military operation in United States history conducted under the direct control of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The specially selected raiders extensively trained and rehearsed the operation at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, while planning and intelligence gathering continued from the 25th of May to the 20th of November 1970. On the 21st of November 1970, a joint United States Air Force, United States Army force commanded by Air Force Brigadier General Leroy J. Manner and Army Colonel Arthur D. Bull Simons landed 56 U.S. Army Special Forces soldiers by helicopter in the Son Tay prisoner of war camp located only 23 miles west of Hanoi, North Vietnam. The objective was the recovery of 61 American prisoners of war thought to be held at the camp, but the mission failed when it was found during the raid that the camp contained no prisoners. They had previously been moved to another camp. Despite the absence of prisoners, the raid was executed with a high degree of success, incurring only 2 casualties and the loss of 2 aircraft, one of which had been part of the plan from the start. Criticism of intelligence failures to determine that the camp was empty of U.S. powers, both public and within the administration of President Richard M. Nixon, led to a major reorganization of the United States intelligence community a year later. Planning, organization and training. Polar Circle. The concept of a rescue mission inside North Vietnam began on the 9th of May 1970. An Air Force intelligence unit concluded through analysis of aerial photography that a compound near Son Tay, suspected since late 1968 of being a prisoner of war camp, contained 55 American POWs and that at least 6 were in urgent need of rescue. The camp was situated in an area where 12,000 North Vietnamese troops were stationed within 5 miles. After validation of the findings, B.G. James R. Allen, the Deputy Director for Plans and Policy at Headquarters USAF, met in the Pentagon on the 25th of May with Army B.G. Donald Blackburn, Special Assistant for Counterinsurgency and Special Activities. Blackburn was responsible directly to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and had also been the first commander of the Covert Studies and Observation Group in Vietnam. Blackburn immediately met with General Earl G. Wheeler, the outgoing JCS chairman, to recommend a rescue of all the POWs at Son Tay. To study the feasibility of a raid, Wheeler authorized a 15-member planning group under the codename Polar Circle that convened on June 10. One of its members was an officer who would actually participate in the raid as a rescue helicopter pilot. The study group, after a review of all available intelligence, concluded that Son Tay contained 61 POWs. When Blackburn's recommendation that he lead the mission himself was turned down, he asked Colonel Arthur D. Simons on the 13th of July to command the Army's personnel. Eglin Air Force Base was selected as the joint training site for the prospective force. Personnel selection proceeded over the objections of the Marine Corps, which was excluded from participation, but selection and planning was performed by special operations operators, not by the JCS, to avoid service parochialism, resulting in a force chosen for mission needs, highlighting combat experience in Southeast Asia and operational specialty skills, and not rank or branch of service. Ivory Coast. The second phase, Operation Ivory Coast, began on 8 August 1970, when Admiral Thomas H. Moore, the new JCS chairman, designated Manner as commander and Simons as deputy commander of the Mission Task Force. Ivory Coast was the organization, planning, training, and deployment phase of the operation. Manor set up an Air Force training facility at Eglin's Duke Field and brought together a 27-member planning staff that included 11 from the prior feasibility study. Simons recruited 103 personnel from interviews of 500 volunteers. Most Special Forces personnel of the 6th and 7th Special Forces groups at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. USAF planners selected key Air Force commanders, who then picked personnel for the CRS helicopter and A-1 Skyrider. CRS were put together from instructors at Eglin and personnel returned from Southeast Asia. 2 CRS for C-130E combat Talons were assembled from squadrons in Germany and North Carolina. All were then asked to volunteer for a temporary duty assignment without additional pay and without being told the nature of the mission. 103 Army and 116 Air Force personnel were selected for the project, including ground force members, air crewmen, support members, and planners. The 219-man task force planned, trained, and operated under the title of the Joint Contingency Task Group. The planning staff set up parameters for a nighttime raid, the key points of which were clear weather and a quarter moon at 35 degrees above the horizon for optimum visibility during low-level flight. For these parameters, 2 mission windows were identified: 18 to 25 October and 18 to 25 November. Training proceeded on ranged C2 at Eglin using an exact but crudely made replica of the prison compound for rehearsals and a $60,000 5-foot by 5-foot scale table model for familiarization. Air Force CRS flew 1,054 hours in southern Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, conducting dissimilar formation training with both UH-1H and HH-3E helicopters at night and at low level, and gaining expertise in navigation training using forward-looking infrared, which, until Ivory Coast, had not been part of the Combat Talons electronics suite. IV formation, in which the slow helicopters drafted in echelon slightly above and behind each wing of the Combat Talon escort aircraft, was chosen and refined for the mission to give the helicopters the speed necessary to keep pace with the Talons flying just above the stall speeds. Special Forces training began on the 9th of September, advancing to night training on the 17th of September and joint training with aircraft on the 28th of September that included 6 rehearsals a day, 3 of them under night conditions. By the 6th of October, 170 practice sessions of all or partial phases of the mission were performed on the mock-up by the Special Forces troopers, many with live fire. On that date, the first full-scale dress rehearsal, using a UH-1H as the assault helicopter, was conducted at night and included a 5.5-HOUR, 687 miles flight of all aircraft, replicating the timing, speeds, altitudes, and turns in the mission plan. The rehearsal spelled the end of the option to use the UH-1 when its small passenger compartment resulted in leg cramps to the Special Forces troopers that completely disrupted the timing of their assault, more than offsetting the UH-1's only advantage over the larger HH-3. 2 further full night rehearsals and a total of 31 practice landings by the HH-3E in the mock-up's courtyard confirmed the choice. On the 24th of September, Manor recommended approval of the October window to U.S. Secretary of Defense Melvin Laird, with the 21st of October as the primary execution date. However, at a White House briefing on the 8th of October with National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger and General Alexander M. Haig, Kissinger delayed the mission to the November window because President Nixon was not in Washington and could not be briefed in time for approval of the October window. This delay, while posing a risk of compromising the secrecy of the mission, had the benefits of additional training. acquisition of night vision equipment, and further reconnaissance of the prison. Manor and Simons met with the commander of Task Force 77, Vice Admiral Frederick A. Bardsher, aboard his flagship US America on the 5th of November to arrange for a diversionary mission to be flown by naval aircraft. Because of policy restrictions of the bombing halt then in place, the naval aircraft would not carry ordnance except for a few planes tasked for combat search and rescue. Between 10 and the 18th of November, the JCTG moved to its staging base at Takli Royal Thai Air Force Base, Thailand. The combat Talons, using the call signs DA-43 and Thumb-66 in the guise of being a part of Project Heavy Chain, left Eglin on the 10th of November, flew to Norton Air Force Base, California, and then routed through Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii and Kadena Air Base, Okinawa, arriving in Takli on the 14th of November. The next day, 4 C-141 Starlifters departed, one per day, carrying the Army contingent of the JCTG, its equipment, and the UH-1 helicopter from Eglin to Thailand. The Special Forces personnel arrived in Thailand at 3 o'clock local time the 18th of November, and later that day President Nixon approved the execution of the mission, setting in motion the final phase, Operation Kingpin. After overcoming in-theater friction with the 1st Weather Group at Tan Son Nhut Air Base, Vietnam, planners began watching the weather during the week before the projected target date. On the 18th of November, Typhoon Patsy struck the Philippines and headed west towards Hanoi. Weather forecasts indicated that Patsy would cause bad weather over the Gulf of Tonkin on the 21st of November, preventing carrier support operations, and converging with a cold front coming out of southern China, would cause poor conditions over North Vietnam for the remainder of the window. The presence of the cold front, however, indicated that conditions in the objective area on the 20th of November would be good and possibly acceptable over Laos for navigation of the low-level penetration flights. A reconnaissance flight on the afternoon of the 20th of November by an RF-4C Phantom carrying a weather specialist confirmed the forecast. Manor decided to advance the mission date by 24 hours rather than delay it by 5 days. Manor issued the formal launch order at 15:56 local time 20th of November, while the raiding force was in the final stages of crew rest, and brought together the entire ground contingent for a short briefing regarding the objective and launch times. Following the briefing, Manor and his staff flew by T-39 Saberliner to Da Nang, where they would monitor the mission from the USAF Tactical Air Control Center, North Sector at Monkey Mountain Facility. 3 theater lifts C-130s previously staged at Utah Pa Royal Thai Navy Airfield arrived at Takli to transport the Army contingent and helicopter crews to Udon RTAFB and the A-1 pilots to Nakhon Phanom. Mission Organization. Special Forces. The 56 Special Forces troopers selected to conduct the raid were flown from Takli to the helicopter staging base at Udon, RTAFB by C-130 on the evening of the 20th of November. The Special Forces were organized into 3 platoons, a 14-man assault group codenamed Blue Boy, which would crash-land within the prison compound, a 22-man support group Greenleaf, which would provide immediate support for the assault team, and a 20-man security group, Redwine, to protect the prison area from NVA reaction forces and provide backup support if needed for either of the other 2 groups. Force. Simons accompanied the Greenleaf Group, while the Ground Force Commander, LTC Elliot P. Bud Sidnor, Jr., was with the Red Wine Group. The 56 raiders were heavily armed, carrying a total of 51 personal sidearms, 48 CAR-15 carbines, 2 M16 rifles, 4 M79 grenade launch, 2 shotguns, and 4 M60 machine guns. They carried 15 Claymore mines, 11 demolition charges, and 213 hand grenades, and were equipped with a plethora of wire cutters, bolt cutters, axes, chainsaws, crowbars, ropes, dual horns, lights, and other equipment to execute the mission. The ground force was also equipped for voice communications with 58 UHF-AM and 34 VHF-FM radios, including a survival radio for each individual soldier. Aviation support: 116 aircraft participated in the operation, with 28 aircraft assigned direct roles in the target area. 2 C-130E combat Talons, modified with the temporary addition of FLIR sets, were assigned to navigate the mission. One was to lead the helicopter assault formation, and the second to escort the A-1 strike formation. Because of the variances in cruising speeds between the helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, the forces flew separate routes, with the faster strike formation trailing the helicopter formation by several minutes and zigzagging across its route. Each combat Talon crew cross-trained to assume the role of the other, but the assault formation was required to have a navigation leader with 4 fully functioning engines all the way to the objective. The 28 aircraft with direct roles were